Imagine walking down a dark alley only to witness a man violently attacking a homeless person. Except, it wasn't a person at all. Dive into the chilling case of Schindler, who tried to murder a mannequin, believing it was a real human. Discover how this bizarre twist led to his arrest and the shocking truth behind his intentions. Stay tuned to unravel this eerie tale of mistaken identity and unsettling violence that rocked Las Vegas. Throughout the United States, a disturbing trend of violent assaults on sleeping homeless individuals seemed to be on the rise, sparking significant alarm among homeless advocates. The late 2010s saw a surge in high-profile cases, such as the 2014 incident in Albuquerque, where 3 teenagers brutally attacked 2 homeless men, fatally striking them with bricks and wooden sticks. Ultimately, all 3 youths faced first-degree murder charges. In a separate incident from 2015, a homeless man was fatally stabbed while sleeping in a Denver alley. Fast forward a few years, and Las Vegas experienced a chilling spree where 3 homeless men were either killed or assaulted over a 2-week span, each suffering brutal head injuries. On November 30th, 2016, a homeless man in Vegas endured a brutal attack, prompting local police intervention. Miraculously, he survived but couldn't identify his assailant. Despite the ordeal, he was certain the attacker was a stranger. The assault appeared entirely arbitrary, leaving the police with scant clues. As months rolled by, it became clear this wouldn't be the final unexpected event. Daniel Alvey, a 46-year-old originally from Chicago, found himself homeless and surviving on the streets of Vegas. He passionately loved Chicago sports, animals, and heavy metal music. After losing his job at a radio station, he found temporary work at Home Depot, but that too fell through. When this event occurred, he was staying at a homeless shelter but ultimately chose the streets over shelter life. For around 4 months, Daniel navigated the tough streets of Vegas. Despite his circumstances, he stayed connected with loved ones, ensuring he called them every couple of weeks to share updates on his journey. In January 2017, Daniel frequently slept near the crossroads of Grand Central Parkway and City Parkway, a well-known spot for the homeless. On a frigid night, January 4th, a shadowy figure assaulted him in his sleep, brutally smashing his skull with a blunt object, ending his life. Due to his sporadic family contact and wandering existence, it took 20 days before his loved ones learned of his tragic fate. Barely a month later, on February 3rd, the enigmatic serial killer resurfaced, targeting Dave Dunn, a 60-year-old homeless man, as he slept perilously close to where Daniel's body had been discovered. The police, now on high alert, could no longer dismiss the murders as mere coincidence. They were likely dealing with a potential serial killer, and unless they took action, there was no reason to believe he would stop anytime soon. The police needed a strategy to catch him, but realistically, they couldn't monitor every homeless person in the city indefinitely. In the end, no weapon was ever left behind. Nothing was stolen from the men, and most importantly, there were no security cameras nearby to record the events. They were operating almost entirely in the dark. Captain Andrew Walsh, the officer in charge of the case, devised an ingenious plan to entrap the killer. Noting that both victims were attacked while sleeping in a vacant lot near the same intersection, Walsh boldly decided to lay a trap for the suspect, hoping to catch the perpetrator in the act. The police fashioned a lifelike decoy, dressing a mannequin in typical homeless attire. Captain Walsh contributed an old pair of boots and one of his wife's blankets. He then procured a knit cap mirroring those worn by homeless men and meticulously observed their sleeping patterns in the area. All of this was done to place the dummy with utmost precision. Afterward, they set up a concealed camera and had undercover officers discreetly monitor the area. Captain Walsh's greatest hope was for the plan to swiftly succeed. Time was ticking before the killer could strike again, and with scant leads, the police had no choice but to rely entirely on their daring plan. For several days, they drove around with a mannequin, searching for the ideal location to set their trap. The officers set up a dummy named Charlie at the intersection, making it look as realistic as possible, and then waited. They didn't see immediate results, so every morning they would take Charlie down, only to set the plan up again later. During this period, the city's homeless population was alerted to a genuine threat, with Walsh noting, "We had a sense of urgency. We didn't want these cases to fall by the wayside because they were homeless. We had to think of something that's not traditional." Fortunately, many of the homeless individuals heeded this warning, steering clear of the deadly zone where the two men lost their lives. After 3 relentless weeks, their tenacity bore fruit. On February 22, 2017, under the keen surveillance of the police, a suspicious man loitered at a busy downtown corner for nearly 15 minutes, clutching a plastic bag. With cautious glances, ensuring he was unobserved, he sidled up to a dummy. From his Little Caesars pizza bag, he drew out a sledgehammer and, with calculated swiftness, smashed it into the dummy's head. Again and again he swung, the hammer's handle gripped firmly with both hands, the forceful impacts causing it to rebound violently off the dummy's skull. Surveillance cameras captured the moment the police's plan unfolded before their eyes. The suspect hid the hammer and began to walk away, only to be quickly surrounded by officers. They seized his hefty ball-peen hammer and handcuffed him on the spot. The suspect was identified as Shane Allen Schindler, a 30-year-old man from Bay City, Michigan. Authorities had no reason to question that he was the killer, as they caught him in the act, attempting to murder yet another person he believed to be a sleeping homeless man. The police escorted him to the station for questioning. Shane denied any intention of harming anyone, insisting he always knew it was a mannequin. He claimed he was just strolling by when he spotted the dummy. He asserted it couldn't be a real person since it neither breathed nor moved. Finding it amusing, he explained he chose to kick it, conveniently overlooking the eyewitnesses who saw him wielding a hammer during the assault. He claimed to be a wandering homeless man, often spending nights in parking lots with just a sleeping bag or blanket. The detectives were skeptical, however, as his spotless black sneakers and impeccably clean hands told a different story. This man had no intention of speaking the truth whatsoever. Shane was swiftly taken into custody, but to everyone's surprise, he was released shortly after. Determined not to let their efforts be in vain, the police assembled a surveillance team to keep an eye on him. They tracked him to the Henderson Hotel where he reserved a room. After he slipped away, they opted to scour the room he had occupied. There, they discovered a receipt for a hammer he had recently returned. But the true bombshell was on his cell phone. It held some incriminating evidence. Shane's phone was filled with selfies, but 2 stood out. In these photos, Shane lay on his back, disturbingly close to the spot where Dave and Daniel had met their tragic end. It seemed he'd revisited the crime scene, snapping selfies like trophies to celebrate his deed. Despite the glaring circumstantial evidence pointing to Shane as the culprit, the police lacked concrete proof. They never saw him assault an actual person, and smashing a dummy with a hammer wasn't enough to pin a murder charge on him. The detectives pooled their resources, but couldn't find solid evidence to press charges for the 2 murders and an assault from months ago. They had no options left. They lacked the proof to take it to court, but Shane was unaware of their predicament. Betting on his foolishness to self-incriminate, they opted to make a deal. Their goal was simple: ensure he didn't walk free and that some form of justice prevailed. The arrangement was far from flawless. By accepting the plea bargain, Shane would be sentenced to 8 to 20 years for the assault on the mannequin, yet he would evade prosecution for the November attack and the murders of Daniel and Dave due to insufficient evidence. Ultimately, it appeared to be the most effective way to guarantee Shane's punishment and removal from society. Commenting on the deal, Andrew Walsh remarked, "This is good for the community that he's taking this deal. He's off the streets." Through this agreement, they sidestepped the courtroom drama of debating the feasibly bizarre notion of murdering a lifeless object. However, in numerous jurisdictions, the law considers the suspect's mindset during the offense. Deborah Dino, a Fordham University law professor, highlighted the legal ramifications of such an event, noting that a criminal's mindset might play a significant role in cases like this. "Most people would think you wouldn't get charged," she said. "This teaches us that criminal law really focuses on what's going through someone's mind. That's what makes people dangerous and a threat to society." Shane Schindler was escorted back to his cell, where he would await his fate until sentencing. Shane's first public defender in Clark County, Phil Cohn, declined to speak on the case, except to point out that the original charge of attempted murder was legally absurd, reasoning that it's impossible to murder a mannequin. Deborah Dino shared a similar perspective, noting, "You can't murder a mannequin, but if the facts were as he believed them to be, he would have been bashing the head of a human being." A justice of the peace mandated that Shane undergo a mental competency assessment, expressing doubts about his mental clarity. Shane remained adamant, asserting that he had always known the mannequin he assaulted was not a living person. The chief deputy district attorney refuted this, arguing it was impossible for Shane to have been unaware that his target wasn't a real human. At the crime scene, the blanket was draped entirely over the dummy's head, and Shane never bothered to lift it for a glance. The authorities managed to pin a few charges on Shane, including a felony for concealing a weapon, his cherished pizza hammer. Bail was set at a steep $50,000. His public defender announced that Shane intended to plead not guilty. During the ongoing competency evaluation, the police retraced Shane's movements around his hometown to piece together his recent activities. In a twist that caught everyone off guard, Shane unexpectedly chose to plead guilty at trial. He confessed that he genuinely believed the mannequin was a living person when he launched his attack. As a result, the prosecutors decided to dismiss the charge related to the concealed weapon. Shane returned to jail to await his fate. Finally, on August 24, 2017, the case reached its conclusion. Facing a possible 8 to 20 years, Shane received the maximum sentence of 20 years for his actions. He stood quiet and impassive as the sentence was delivered. When issuing the judgment, District Judge Michael Villani remarked, "These attacks are senseless. It boggles the mind." Daniel Alvey's family, observing from the stands, erupted in joy upon learning that Shane received the harshest possible sentence. They embraced and wept outside the courtroom, overcome with emotion. Daniel was ready to join his sister's summer wedding festivities, but instead, his picture graced the program. On that day, a poignant memorial took place, with balloons released into the sky in tribute to his life, and the justice served as his killer was imprisoned.